What is going on, nerds? Welcome back to JDsNerdverse. We are doing a video today. We're going to review The Acolyte by Star Wars. I'm going to tell you how bad it is and why I think it's bad and why a lot of people think it's bad. And you may disagree or agree, whatever. You don't have to watch this video, so giving you that warning. But if you do want to watch this video and you do like this content, please make sure you like, share, subscribe. I actually plan on doing a lot of this stuff when I started this channel. And then I, decided to have more kids, and time was limited, so I didn't get around to doing a lot of these things. I did the video game aspect, played a lot of Pokemon, whatever. If you like video games, great, it's on the channel. But I do plan on doing a lot more reviews of things I consider nerd stuff. So this is one of them. I'm a big Star Wars fan. Anything anyone will tell you about me is that I'm a huge Star Wars fan. There's Star Wars stuff all over this room in here. You can't really see a lot of it. A lot of the stuff back there is not Star Wars, but I have a lot of it. I have probably about a dozen t-shirts that are Star Wars based, and big fan of Star Wars. And I do not like it when the things that I like get messed with in a bad way. It's one thing if you're gonna make good content and grow the lore, the storylines of the product, but I do not like the fact whenever people ruin it. And this is one example where I think it was ruined. I'll give a lot of examples of what is wrong with this in general, so I'll break that down for you. But a lot of it, everyone's gonna say like it's certain things that it's all these. There's a lot of things wrong with this show. It's not just one thing. It's not one thing. It's not one aspect. It's a lot of aspects of it. And it's actually a lot of aspects that Star Wars in general has been bad since Disney took over. A lot of things. Some things have been good. I'm a big fan of Rogue One, big fan of Andor. But the problem with this show is there's a lot of problems, and I'll dive into that. So the first thing I want to say about this show is the Rotten Tomatoes rating that I have right here. 80 critic score and 17 audience score. Critic score I don't trust. Nothing Disney have I trusted for a long time. Disney just does not get negative scores very often. In all of Star Wars, if you look at all the Star Wars content out there, the only thing negative score-wise that the audience scores give, or the critic scores given, was Rise of Skywalker, which, it's not very good, but Rise of Skywalker is a lot better than Last Jedi. But Last Jedi has like an 85 with the critic score. So I don't trust anything. You can watch movies that are making millions of dollars, and they're giving it like a 55, but they'll give this crap from Disney, this $180 million bomb from Disney, and it's an 80 on Rotten Tomatoes. You gotta be kidding me. It's a 17 audience score, and people are like, oh, it's all the review bombing. I don't agree with that at all. I went through and read a bunch of the comments. All the positive ones are just people that just put 5 stars and do nothing. So that's review bombing to me. Okay, they don't really, nothing about like the actual comment goes into it. It's a score that they give. And the critic score, I read one critic score. It says this show is not the best show ever, but this, that, and the other 5 out of 5. I'm like, if it's not the best show ever, then it's definitely not a 5 out of 5. 5 out of 5 means the show's perfect. There's really nothing to improve on it. Very few shows are like that. But there's reviews on the critics side, they're giving this thing like a 5 out of 5 or 4 out of 5, and it literally says in there, not the best Star Wars content out there, but then they give it a 5 out of 5. So I don't want to hear anything about like review bombing. Go look at the critics' reviews. Okay? So let's dive into why The Acolyte is bad. The first overall thing that I want to talk about with me, and this is something that I've come up with, Disney just does not understand Star Wars. They don't understand Star Wars, and I'll explain what they don't understand here in a little bit, but let me go over the reasons why the show is bad. The show is written very horribly. The show is written with a lot of things. Here's how I think the show is written. Here's how a show is supposed to be written first off. You make your characters. You make a backstory. What motivates these characters? What drives these characters? What in the past has made them driven this way? What in the past is happened that made them flawed or made them, this character trait stands out, whatever case may be. And then you build a story around them. What kind of plots do we want to have? I believe that this show, they literally said, let's have diversity, let's have this thing, and then let's have this thing. And these 3 things need to be key. Jedi suck, or Jedi are evil and bad, they're unredeemable, whatever. We have to have some space lesbians, and we have to have diversity. How do we make a show with those things? That's how it was decided. This is how the show's made. Then they write backwards some half-assed plot. That's exactly how I believe the show was made. In doing so, you don't develop good characters. Okay, none of the characters are very well fleshed out. Saul was kind of fleshed out a little bit, but none of the other characters have any backstory. Nothing good is built out of their backstory. Osha and May are supposed to be the main characters, and their backstory is not really fleshed out. And the dialogue between characters is horrible as well. When you don't have well-rounded characters, you don't have any. There's nothing from where the lines that they say and what they say comes from. Let me give a great example. If you ever watched Game of Thrones, seasons 1 through 4, roughly, or 1 through 5, those were written by George R.R. Martin, and a lot of that dialogue was pulled right out of the books, where you have these characters that have a backstory that are fleshed out by George R.R. Martin long before he ever started writing Game of Thrones, or Song of Ice and Fire, if you want to go technical. And the characters' words and everything is just, everything has a meaning. Everything is built off something to lead to something. Okay, there's not just throwaway dialogue in the first couple of seasons. There's a lot of dialogue that is important, and especially in the books, every dialogue is important, especially in the books. If you compare that to the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones, where they surpassed the books, and you no longer had the great interpersonal dialogue between characters that George R.R. Martin wrote, because he knows the drive for every character, the dialogue in later seasons is horrible compared to it. Whereas, like, you have a scene where there's going to be travel from Winterfell to King's Landing, because Ned Stark was asked to be the hand of the king. There's dialogue there that builds out the backstory of characters about how Ned got Jon Snow as his son, and so it fleshes that out. Whereas in seasons 8, they're traveling from Winterfell to King's Landing, and they're just there, and the next scene they show up, and there's nothing in between all that. So it doesn't flesh out that's why the last 2 seasons are horrible compared to the first 4 or 5 seasons. Acolyte is exactly the same thing. They don't flesh out the characters. They don't there's not actually, I don't think they built the characters. Here I know they didn't build the characters. Is whoever the Sith guy is, the guy with the, Darth Sleeveless or whatever, Snarky J calls him. She does not know his backstory. All we know about his backstory is that he's a Sith, and she used to be the green chick's Padawan at one point. The one with the flaccid whip. That's all we know about him. Nothing else. There's nothing else about him. There's no backstory. There's nothing built. And to be fair, they might be trying to either plan for a new season, or maybe they didn't care to. And here's the other problem with this, is the episodes are very short and choppy. It would not have been a bad idea to make these episodes go from like 30 minutes to maybe 50 minutes, and maybe flush out some more backstory, flush out some better dialogue. Instead, everything feels rushed. It's very disjointed. There's no character development, and then in that process, you're killing off characters before we have an investment to have that death pay off. You're not building the investment in the characters before you kill them off. That's the problem with these. This is why there's no payoff. When Game of Thrones had a character death, there was payoff on that. There was an emotional investment in that character's death. The Red Wedding there's so many reaction videos of Red Wedding. There's no reaction videos to, remember now, the spiky haired chick that gets killed by Darth Sleeveless. There's nothing, because she has not been fleshed out. She really had barely any dialogue at all. In fact, all those Jedi didn't have really any dialogue at all. Nothing was built with these characters. And when you have no build up to a character and their investment in the outcome of them in the story, you have no reaction whenever they die, or whenever they don't accomplish anything. And that's one of the bigger problems with the show. Any show you watch, there's build up and there's character development that makes you care about the outcome of the character. You're invested in what happens with that character. That character gets their head cut off at the end of season 1, like Ned Stark. People reacted. People, had feelings about it. Some people might have left the show, but other people were like, "Oh man, they killed off what are they going to do next?" And then they built from that and had better character development for the next few characters, and then killed off another person that people were invested in. Or they built up a character so bad that people were invested in their death. I know I'm using Game of Thrones a lot. I can use Breaking Bad as a better example if you want. They had great dialogue as well. And great character development as well. That's something that's wrong with this. The acting is also very horrible. Now that can spawn from bad writing. It can spawn from everything else. Where they're just reading the lines on there, but they could do it a lot better. The dialogue is just so god awful between characters, and the acting is horrible. The biggest part of the acting being horrible is there's no care in the world. Stoneface, someone dies. Stoneface whenever other Jedi around them die. Stoneface whenever something that could be world changing. There's no little reaction from Osha that she finds out her mom was killed by Saul, whatever, when she hears him admit it. And none of the characters themselves are really, what's the word I want to say? They're not true to character. None of them are true to character. The whole part of the show starts off with May being a murderer, an assassin. Okay, and within like seconds of coming across potentially a lot of Jedi and looking for whoever, I can't remember the name of the person right now, the Wookiee one, the Wookiee Jedi. She's like, oh, I'm gonna go join it. I'm gonna turn myself in. And so she's like so wishy-washy. And then May is the same way, or Osha's the same way. It spends this whole movie being, I'm not my sister, and then she becomes her sister. It's just completely horribly, lack of continuity, lack of consistency in characters, so wishy-washy. It's just like they're plot-driven characters. And what I mean is they modify the character to kind of just flow with the plot as needed. It's not like a character is this way and the plot they react in the world they're in, if that makes sense. Okay, the acting's horrible. The biggest thing with Star Wars, and this is not just Star Wars Acolyte, Star Wars in general, with Jedi or Disney Star Wars, let me phrase that, is the lack of continuity or ruined continuity. As they don't respect, a lot of people who are writing this don't respect Star Wars, so they don't respect the world they're in, so they just make up random stuff. They make up force powers. You can fly through the space like a space Mary Poppins. You can all of a sudden you can hyper drive through other ships because it's convenient for the plot, so on and so forth. There's a lot of things that they do that are not on continuity. So for like one of the biggest things with Star Wars, I can't say, and this happened in the last episode, is that the way that Sith get their red lightsabers is you have to get a Jedi's kyber crystal and make it bleed. That's what the continuity is. That's what they say turns a kyber crystal red. Now, here's how it was before Star Wars got their sticky, ooey gooey, nasty fingers on stuff. It used to be a kyber crystal that was red was synthetic. And the other, like the Jedis were actually got from a certain planet. I can't remember the planet right now, but they were got from a planet, and it was like a whole ceremony about finding your kyber crystal, and really the kyber crystal kind of finds you a little bit. It's kind of like how in Harry Potter, the wizard, the wand chooses the wizard. The kyber crystal makes itself available and appears to the Jedi when they're doing this ceremony. And Sith use synthetic for a couple of reasons. One, you can't have, Sith apprentice and Padawans from Jedi at the same planet at the same time trying to get their kyber crystals. It's not going to work out very well. But kyber crystals that are synthetic also react well to dark energy and the dark side of the Force. And there is a 1 in, I don't know, 1 in a million or 1 in 100,000 chance it could shatter the kyber crystal inside of a Jedi's lightsaber. So that's why they used them, is because it worked well with dark energy. Now, and it's like a circle. It's a circular logic here. If you're a Sith, you have to kill a Jedi and get his kyber crystal and make it bleed and turn it red. Okay, but how am I going to kill the Jedi if I don't have a lightsaber? Well, you got to go kill a Jedi to get a lightsaber and turn the thing red. Okay, so how do I do that if I don't have a lightsaber? Well, you got to go kill a Jedi. It's a continuous flow of BS that if you don't have, like what happened in the Acolyte, where Saul's going to sit there and let her force choke him to death, you're not going to kill anyone. The Jedi's just going to kill you, and this is probably why maybe there's not that many Sith. But at one time there was a lot of Sith. So how did all these Sith that just showed up without Jedi being around get their kyber crystals? If that's the canon that we're going with, the canon doesn't make sense. Like I said, it's a circular logic there. You have to kill a Jedi to take his crystal and make it bleed. But how do you kill a Jedi? Well, you gotta get a lightsaber. How do I get a lightsaber? Well, you gotta go kill a Jedi and make it. It's a circular logic. And that's what I mean by continuity. And then there's also canon breaking. So other continuity issues is like characters that shouldn't be alive at the time, like Ki-Adi-Mundi. He wasn't born for another 30 years. And they don't care enough about the canon. It's not like he was like a young Ki-Adi-Mundi. He was like maybe 5 or he was a Padawan, maybe sitting in there. Maybe you can say, well, he was young or whatever. But no, this is made over 100 years before the for the events of Episode 1. And Ki-Adi-Mundi is born 30 years after this show is established. So yeah, he's not going to be around, but they don't know that because they don't respect Star Wars and at least look at you only have someone takes 5 minutes to go look at the lore. Now I'm not going to sit there and say Yoda wouldn't have been there. Yoda's like 800 years old. So Yoda would have definitely been there, but Ki-Adi-Mundi would not have. That's like if you had that's like if you had Qui-Gon Jinn show up in the show or something, he definitely wouldn't have. And Ki-Adi-Mundi their species lives about as long as humans do. So it's not something where like, oh, his species lives longer like Yoda, or like Wookiees live about 200 years or whatever. Not even close. If you had Chewie show up, that might have been something I'd been like, okay, cool, that's feasible. Okay, that's possible. It could be Chewie could just be really old. It's possible, but no. Ki-Adi-Mundi is not in there, and the fact that you couldn't take one person to go look at Wikipedia or anywhere else, or go ask George Lucas how old is Ki-Adi-Mundi whenever he's in episode 1. Like, well, in episode 1 he's like this many years old, and he's not born or he's born like 60 years before episode 1, so he definitely couldn't have been in the show. All you had to do was ask. But no, they don't respect George Lucas. The writers of this don't respect George Lucas at all. They don't care about his input. In their minds, Disney bought it, and Disney can do what they want with it, including breaking canon, which is what they've done. So now here's the big crux of the problem, is the canon breaking stuff that they did. So what makes Anakin Skywalker special? I will ask you that, pause for a second, make you think about it, and then I'll answer it. So go ahead. And so here's what makes Anakin Skywalker special. Anakin Skywalker is the first conception of the Force into a person. The way, if you don't know what makes Anakin Skywalker special, is he is the Force manifestation of life into his mother, Shmi. Shmi did not have relations with another person, and she just wasn't pretty much the immaculate conception of Star Wars is what he is. And he was done to be the chosen one to bring balance to the Force. And he is the first person ever done like that, up until this stupid show. This show establishes that this cult of lesbian space witches, okay, they use the dark side of the Force to manipulate midichlorians in each other, and that's how they procreate. Okay, the main characters, Osha and May, are a byproduct of manipulating midichlorians from one of these space witches to another, and that's how they make children and impregnate each other. What made Anakin special, what made Anakin Skywalker the pretty much central point of the first two, the two trilogies, what made him special was he was the first ever and only ever conception of the Force, the manifestation of life. And because his midichlorian count so how, it made him very Force sensitive, and he can go light side, dark side. He does choose light side, then he goes dark side, then he goes back to the light side, and he brings balance to the Force, killing off the one guy who's the big problem in Star Wars, which is Palpatine, who's a villain in two different trilogies. Okay, so that is the problem with Disney not understanding canon breaking stuff. So now, what is the point of Anakin? Anakin is now what? He's the third person made that way. Doesn't make him very special. Osha and May were made that way, and then they teased Darth Plagueis, like watching all this stuff happening, and that he gets the idea. Now the canon is supposed to be Darth Plagueis tried to do it and failed, and the Force, in response to that, made Anakin to bring balance to the Force, because the dark side, Darth Plagueis, was trying to do something very unnatural. It's kind of like probably the equivalent of making a Horcrux, like in Harry Potter, and that's probably how the Force reacted to it. Okay, so that's the canon breaking stuff. It ruins the backstory and plots of characters. Another one it ruined the plot of is Ki-Adi-Mundi says in episode 1 there hasn't been a Sith around for over 100 years, which, you know, he might not have been around, but they clearly established he was around. So either he's lying, or what is it? It's the lack of continuity. It's canon breaking, huge lack of continuity. Just like another example is in Solo. If you ever watched Solo, this is in episodes 4, 5, and 6. You have this basically display of Han Solo being this great pilot and this great navigator throughout space, and he's like a badass and all this other stuff. Well, nope. A lot of what made him awesome was this social justice warrior robot that got downloaded into the Millennium Falcon. That's what made him awesome. That's what made the ship awesome. It had nothing to do with him. It had to do with all of this robot that was about liberating robots. That's what made him good, instead of whatever it was. It's like the canon breaking stuff of established characters, and what's ruined these established characters. Han Solo goes from this guy in episode 4 who only cares about himself. He doesn't care about anyone else. He only wants to make himself money, and he's a smuggler, and he doesn't give two craps about anyone but himself. And then by the end of episode 6, he is invested in the outcome of the rebellion. He's also invested in Leia. They have a thing, they have a relationship, and he's invested in his friendship with Luke. And he's just a complete character arc. How you ruin that? The first thing you do in episode 7 was establish that he was a bum who abandoned his wife and his child to go run out in space with his furry friend Wookiee. Or Chewie. That's what you established. That he's a bum, deadbeat dad. You ruined the character because you didn't like him. You don't respect Star Wars. It circles back to that plot that Disney does not understand or respect Star Wars or the canon it exists in. How'd you ruin Luke? Luke, the ultimate archetype of of a protagonist, of a hero, always going to choose to do the right thing. Through the entire series of episodes 4 through 6, saw his father and thought his father could be redeemed up until the moment he was about to die for that belief, and then him choosing to pretty much almost die for his father got his father liberated from the dark side. And the way you destroy that character is you don't have him at all in episode 7 except for the last 10 seconds or whatever, and then what you do in episode 8, you completely shatter who he was, and you establish that he was training a new order of Jedi, and he had one bad dream about one of his Padawans, and he wanted to go kill him, and then became this hermit. And then he goes out like I'll say it, like a bitch. He goes out like a bitch, and the way he ends this, leaves the series just by evaporating into the Force, not going out in the blaze of glory or nothing, something like that. Nope, just astral projects himself across the universe, and whenever it establishes that he's not actually there, he evaporates. That's how one of the greatest heroes in cinematic history meets their end. And then they probably would have ruined Leia. I mean, she's a lady, so Force is female, so they probably wouldn't have done anything bad to her. But Carrie Fisher died, so I mean, you did make her do the Mary Poppins thing. So I'll come off that soapbox about how they ruin characters. The only one they haven't ruined yet is Lando Calrissian. They basically established that he's pansexual or something like that. I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world. He's having sex with his robot. That's what they've established with him, is he was banging his robot. But yeah, it's just canon breaking stuff. And the biggest thing they tried to push in this show specifically is Jedi bad, Sith good. If there's anything that George Lucas has been adamant about and anything he's ever talked about, is Jedi are the good guys. They may make mistakes because they are human, or they are a humanoid creature that makes mistakes, because it's just human nature as we call it here, but there's other creatures, so it's like human nature, Mon Calamari nature, or whatever the creatures are called in the universe. But it's established that the Sith are clearly the bad guys. They clearly are. If you look at anything in like the Old Republic, a lot of characters are literally deteriorating because the dark side has consumed them so much. That's why they have to wear all that extra stuff on them. Okay, it's anti-Jedi, and in this show, it makes Jedi out to be the bad guy. It makes a whole bunch of Jedi out to be bad guys. They're liars. They're murderers and all this other stuff. And it's this typical plot going on in anything Hollywood now, where it's the oppressors versus the oppressed. The Sith are being oppressed by this big, powerful entity that is the Jedi. And that is why we need to be sympathetic. Even though we're murderers, we're killing people, not on accident, not by just circumstance, but there's plotting to do it. But somehow we're right, and the Jedi are wrong, and Jedi are bad. That's the overall arching theme of this show. And this is why this show does not resonate with people. All these things I've mentioned are not going to resonate with Star Wars fans. You can have bad writing, but as long as you stuck with the continuity, they can probably forgive it. You can probably have the continuity be off, but the writing was very good, and the dialogue between characters was so engaging that you could be okay with it. But if you have all these things combined all at once, people are not going to buy into it, and that's what's happening with this. And then you have all the other the bad writing, all those things are bad. You can't sit there and say these things are good in any way, shape, or form and say it with a serious face. Now, here's the biggest thing that I've just kind of figured out about Disney. Disney doesn't get Star Wars. They don't understand Star Wars. They have all these agendas that they have, where the Force is female, and you got to have all this diversity, and got to have all this stuff, and there's all these things they're trying to throw into Star Wars, which they don't understand. That Star Wars is already these things. Star Wars is already a very pro-female driven show. Leia in the original trilogy, very powerful, very strong character. Mon Mothma in the original trilogy, very strong, very powerful character. And then you go the prequel trilogy. You have Shmi, who is a slave, who was conceived by the Force. No way to know that, but she raised a good kid. Strong female character. Padme, very strong female character. There's just a buildup of all these female characters good across the board. I don't like the character, but okay, Rey in the sequel trilogy, not the greatest, but still a strong female character. Ahsoka Tano, a strong female character. Bo-Katan, strong female characters. There's like, it's looking at the show and being like, oh, there's no female. There is plenty of female representation. Plenty of female representation. You have Yaddle. You have, I can't remember the one Jedi. It's a female Jedi. There's a cutscene from episode 3. I can't remember the name of it. But there's plenty of strong female characters everywhere. But they'll look at that like, oh, there's not enough. There's plenty. There's plenty. That's all you want to see. And that's fine if that's all you want. But you shouldn't buy the product and then like, oh, let's bastardize it with all this overcorrection of things. No. Gradually do it. Throw it in. But there's so many characters that are in Star Wars that are strong female characters. And here's the other thing about Star Wars that Disney really doesn't understand. They don't understand this at all. That Star Wars is already a very diverse intellectual property. It is diverse in a lot of ways. And it might not be diverse in the way that they want, but it is very diverse. You literally have the Rebellion, which is a combination, Rebellion, right here, which is a combination of all these different races fighting together to beat the Empire. If you haven't watched it, you need to watch it. There's a lot of combination of all these different races and creatures, male and female, all working together to beat one powerful entity, which is the Empire. The show's already diverse. Look at your cast. You got Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, you got Chewbacca, you have R2-D2, C-3PO, you have Leia, and then you get all the characters of General Akbar, for example. You have all like Ahsoka's a different, like they're all different races or species might be a better way to put it, of characters that are blended into a world. They're all working together to fight one powerful entity. That is diversity at its finest right there. And Disney does not understand that. They don't understand that what they bought was an already diverse world. They don't have to add more diversity. They don't have to inject it with diversity steroids and pump it up. You just need to have more characters that are more species, more broadened out. But what they want to do is they want to have more characters and have less of the other species and just have more diversity amongst the human characters. And that's what they don't understand. There's already diversity amongst the human characters across the canon of Star Wars. But what they don't understand is that Star Wars is about all this meshing pot. Literally the Empire, whenever the Empire took over, whenever it went from the Galactic Republic to the Empire took over and established and basically enslaved a bunch of races. That is literally canon in the whole point of Star Wars is that they are fighting that oppressor. A combination of all these races and things, but that's not enough for Disney. They gotta we gotta have this and this in it and make it this, and if people don't like it they can piss off. No, the only reason Star Wars exists, George Lucas could have made this and no one could have gone and seen it, and we don't have Star Wars, but the fans went and saw it. And when you have a large majority of fans, if there are a large majority of fans that love this show, they could easily counteract this 17% and push this thing up to a good 40, 50, or 60% or something like that. But it's not. There's a small conglomerate of fans who, I guess there's a small conglomerate that will follow Disney or Star Wars blindly, and whatever they make is good no matter what. And then I think there's another group that's like, as long as it's diverse, they'll cheer for it. And as long as it hits one of their things that they cheer for in movies, it hits it. But there's a large majority of fans that are continuity first, and after you're feeling second about all the other things. And they're the ones that are going to review things, and they're the ones that are invested in the outcome of all these things. Let me ask you a question. These idiots that are just now working at Star Wars, at Disney, making Star Wars content, who do you think's more invested? The person who saw them, has watched them from, I go back probably about 4 years old, I remember watching Star Wars with my dad. Sitting next to my dad watching Star Wars, Star Wars, the first one, the New Hope, A New Hope. I can go back to remember sitting there. Who thinks more invested? Me sitting there with my dad, and I've watched his movies probably 100 times. I've seen every movie in theaters. I've watched a lot of the episodes and stuff online. I've had thousands and probably thousands of hours of conversation with people about how awesome Star Wars is, and even come up with my own theories about Star Wars. Or some idiot who doesn't like Star Wars but sees it as an opportunity to implant their ideology and their whatever they believe in into a show. Who thinks more invested? Me or that person that's they'll probably lose their job because the show doesn't make money. They're gonna move on to the next project where they can ingest that stuff into. Who's more invested? Let me ask you that. It's like I always tell people whenever I'm a sports fan, you can probably see my Redskins poster right over there. I'm a diehard Redskins / Washington football team / Commanders fan. Diehard. And whenever there was someone that said something, I said something, and I have another YouTube video about Washington, and I said something, And they're like, well, you keep saying we for? You're not on the team. Like, I am more invested than anyone else, than any player on that team right now. Who do you think's more invested? My dad, who lived around there, went to all the Super Bowls they had, watched them win, watched them lose, was there whenever Rigo ran had the run and won our first Super Bowl. Who's more invested? Has stuff around their house they've had for years, invest their own personal money into Washington to pay Sunday ticket every year for the last X amount of years, so I can watch every one of their games. Who do you think's more invested, me or the guy that got paid $20 million a year to go play there and then he leaves whenever they don't win a game or two? Who's more invested in that team? That's, you know the answer to that. I'll let you answer that in the comment section down below. But that's my video. This show was complete garbage. It's canon breaking. It was very poorly written. It was very poorly acted, and it's more of a pushing of checking all these boxes of, does it have diversity? Yeah. Does it have diversity with the LGBTQ community? Sure. Does it have diversity in ethnicity? Sure. And just keeps checking those boxes, and it's like, okay, well, let's write a Star Wars story around all these things. That's what I believe they did. I believe they did it exactly that way. There was not a story that they thought of to begin with, and like, okay, let's build around this story. Nope, they built around all these these boxes they wanted to check off, and then decided, you know what, let's kind of build a story around these things. You know, all these other Star Wars shows and things don't have this much stuff, so let's throw it all in this thing, overload it, and we'll kind of throw a plot in just for shits and giggles. So let me know what you think. What do you think of the Acolyte? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it indifferent? Do you want more videos like this? Gladly do more. There's a lot of movies come up. I can also talk about movies in the past that I've watched, some series that I've watched. I can do rankings of, I actually had on this channel, I don't know if it's still up, but I actually had a ranking of all the Star Wars movies, but I never actually ranks the shows, so maybe that's something I'll do next. Well, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. This is JD, it's JDsNerdverse. Have a good one, and I'll see you guys next time.